If you've been thinking about wanting to start a podcast but not sure where to get started, I have some news for you. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast as well with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hi gang, Donna here. Today's guest is Helen Edwards. Helen has a long list of accomplishments. She has taught life skills, networking, and conscious behavior classes in shelters since 2008. She has a background as a vision therapist and working with kids with autism. She has also worked the Phoenix Prison Yoga Project, PYP, working with incarcerated adults and teens. She's the entrepreneur of Sexy Freedom Media and host of the Sexy Freedom Media podcast, an author of Nothing Sexier Than Freedom and Your Inner Evolution. Today, though, for our Better To conversation, we're going to dig into a moment of cheating and why she took the risk and acceptance of the outcome. Hi, Helen. How are you doing today?
Great. How are you?
I'm
Hello,
doing
everyone.
good. Helen, as I had said in the intro, has the Sexy Freedom Media Company. So you want to tell us a little bit about that first before we dive into
Yes.
the
To the juicy part.
yes.
First of all, my name's Helen Edwards. I am the owner of Sexy Freedom Media, Sexy Freedom LLC, and I'm also the author of Nothing Sexier Than Freedom. So the business brand is about the expression of freedom and, the idea to let go of other people's opinions, gain confidence, and go forward in the direction that you're called to make this world a better place.
Smart, smart. And that does kind of tie into the Better To moment, does it not?
Yes.
Because in a way, what we're going to discuss is about you cheating and how you were dealing with the repercussions afterwards, correct?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, because obviously this led you on this journey that you are on now. So you were in a relationship, correct?
Quite a few, yes.
Okay, so let's go to the one that really hit home to make you realize that I'm doing this, why am I doing this, and how did you unravel why you were doing it?
Sure. Well, I was a notorious cheater in my past. And I can't say that it is both a bad thing or a good thing. I know there's some people that this is a trigger for them. If they hear somebody say it's not bad, what do you mean? Because we all have a different type of personality, and cheating for me was an escape to get out of my own habits of staying with somebody who's abusive or um, negligent. And I just didn't have the heart to leave because I loved them,
Hmm.
more than I love myself, come to see. And, I know there's healthier ways to get out of a relationship, but at the time, cheating was, part of my wiring actually from childhood. So I learned the behavior, I was instilled with behavior, and I carried on the behavior. And I didn't recognize the behavior a as a negative until later on in life when it started becoming, until karma basically taught me some lessons.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I can see that completely. So, did you see other people in your family that cheated? Is that what made you think it was acceptable to do it, or was it just something that felt natural?
Yeah, both of those actually. So, when you're young, a lot of your learned behaviors from adults and the people around you. So I definitely learned it as a child, um and then developed it as a skill to get out of tough situations for myself, or used it as a way of blocking, the more painful feelings inside myself that I didn't feel like at the time that I needed to deal with.
I can understand that. I mean, for my first marriage, I think part of me always assumed that the marriage was going to end. I don't know why, but I think before we even got married, I assumed it was going to end. It had a natural
Mm,
shelf life. And so I chose to leave before that happened. And
mhm.
why is that? I don't know. But I guess watching my parents' relationships outside of their marriage after they were divorced kind of gave me that whole thought process of, well, nothing lasts forever.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So, what happened to really make you realize that you had this issue?
I wrote a book.
Well, yeah, I understand.
Yeah. So I wrote a book and I got my first editor. And in the process of Nothing Sexier Than Freedom, I actually had 5 editors, and
Wow.
each one had a different perspective. I mean, I had a full-blown Christian editor, I had an atheist editor, I had editors from all different backgrounds who were kind of diving in my book and helping me with it, and then questioning me on certain behaviors and ideas and beliefs. So it's not all just about cheating. There's a lot in there about my journey of becoming, the woman I am today. And the questioning kind of forced me to look back into my past. Like, why is it that I do this? Why is it that I think this way? Like, what am I not dealing with that's inside of me that is causing me to think this way, act this way, and have these results?
So, what was the root cause?
What was that?
What was the root cause, do you think?
Oh, sure. Well, one of the things that I strongly believe in is that, your behaviors and patterns come from thousands of people and experiences that you've had from all of your growing up. So it's not just one thing, but I know that a few foundations of the the actions and the habits that I took were from, my own parents, and watching them have, secret rendezvous and lifestyles in the end. And when there's kids around and they take you with them, it's like, hush, we don't say this, we don't talk about this, we don't, so you learn, but these are your parents, these are your idols, at some point in your life where you're like, oh my gosh, I trust their behavior, I trust what they're saying, and then you kind of develop that in yourself.
Right. I get that because, my dad, he had live-ins, and my mom, before she married my stepfather, they lived together. So when I got to a certain point, it's like, okay, I'm on my own now. If I decide to live with somebody, they can't say a damn thing because they did
Right.
it. So I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think parents are as perceptive that kids are picking up everything. And I mean,
Hmm.
when you think about it, if you roll it back to that first time you slip with a curse word in front of a kid,
Yeah.
and that becomes their new favorite word, much to you being mortified. But that
Right.
it's as simple as that. I mean, kids are sponges; they pick up stuff. So, were you? Did you? Were you married at the time, or were you just dating when all this was coming about?
When I look back and I, did my research for the book and everything, research in my own life and research in the female brain, and all of these books about the wiring of women, specifically because I obviously, I identify as a woman,
Yeah.
and I saw, these patterns and these traits on the hard wiring. I realized that, um, it was from the beginning. I was hush hush from the beginning, from when I say the beginning, from my toddler, you know, learning how to keep secrets, learning how to keep secrets with my siblings. And as I got older, I I consider marriage a very sacred connection, and I didn't want to cheat. But when I did cheat in my marriage, um, I realized that I did it vindictively. I did it to hurt, I intentionally wanted to hurt the other person, so there's I learned through time how to sharpen my cheating skills, to be honest, because I looked at it like a sword that
Hmm.
I can fight with, that if somebody hurt me, I can chop them up and hurt them too, or hurt them before they hurt me. And I was very proud of this at a certain time in my life, because I had rules. I had rules to, you don't sleep with married men, you don't sleep with your friends, men's or exes. I had certain rules. And when you're very vulnerable and open about what you're doing, you actually attracts like. So I met other cheaters. I met some really, um, also out there to intentionally hurt people, but it was more, they didn't have rules. They were out to, do it and hurt. women. They were out to do it to hurt. It was just a different type of hurt. It was all still hurting. Like they say, hurt people. And that's what I ultimately realized is I was dealing with some unresolved hurt inside of myself from a very, childhood trauma.
And I think that's a lot of people don't deal with their childhood trauma. They just continue on. You were sitting there saying some of these cheaters were hurting people to hurt women because most likely they had one person that screwed with them over, and then now they're going to lash out at everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, you're not really lashing out at the person that hurt you. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so obviously, did you feel that there was karma to be paid back because you did all this?
At a young age, I knew about karma. I knew about, what goes around comes around. It was a golden rule that was embedded in us. And I knew about it, but I didn't really spend a lot of focus on it, which, I think we all tend to forget about that one when we're
Yeah.
just doing stuff and falling prey to our desires. Um, you know, and when it hit me really hard, and it just didn't spank me once, it spanked me quite a few times. And there was a point where I was just like, oh my God, like, am I done getting whoopings? Am I done getting the karma that I put out there? And it could be years later when you're grown, you're happy and everything's great in your life. And all of a sudden karma's like, oh yeah, I forgot to pay you back for this, or here it comes,
Yeah.
and you gotta brace yourself and take the hit. And, like Rocky said, take the hit, get back and keep moving forward, because that's how it's going to feel. Because if you keep punching back and keep, throwing balls back at karma's going to keep throwing them back at you. And you got to learn how to say, I'm done with these habits. I'm ready to release them, and I'm ready to level up and step forward and into a new me. And then you can start creating a chain reaction of new types of karma, which is good karma.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. People don't realize sometimes what they're doing, that it's actually attracting things. You can put things out there, and if you're putting out negative, it's going to come back at you that way.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
and I will tell the audience this is the second time we're doing this podcast. When we did the first time, somehow it did not get recorded properly. So here we are again. So we've had somewhat of this conversation before. And I think last time when we were talking, you mentioned something about your brother.
Mhm.
Um, and the reason I bring this up is because it was suicide, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I had told you that my mom had committed suicide. How did how did you handle it when he passed?
Well,
Well, I mean, I
grief
guess
is,
maybe I should
yeah.
say this. Did you did you know this was coming, or had he hit his depression really well?
N- Um, my family were really tight. We were really well connected. My immediate family, which is my mom, my siblings. So when, I mean, my brother and me, we were very, very similar, very wild, outgoing, extroverts. We loved talking to people, making lots of friends. And we were open about talking to each other about our issues. I'm depressed, I'm upset, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. He had gone through so much more far worse things that I thought, you think somebody can just handle it. And there's a lot more to it. There's depression, there's medications, there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's things that can get involved, there's people, there's your support team around you. And I don't know who his friends were, but I know they weren't, I will say, at the level of my support. And so when it all happened, there was a lot of things that contributed to it, a lot of the same things that I've gone through. So you just think somebody's going to be able to get through it. And when it happened, there's the 5 stages of grief that people go through. One of those is blaming yourself. I really have done a lot of work, extensive work on myself over the last 16 years since my own divorce, and my own suicide attempts and my own dealings with depressions and manic and bipolar. And so when all of this happened, I realized my emotional intelligence is a little bit far above than uh far advanced than my family. So I use that opportunity to be there more as a support and, take some time to fly to each of my siblings and spend some time with them. Um, I didn't go through that stage of blaming myself because I knew it wasn't anybody's fault to blame for his actions. We're all responsible for our own emotions and actions. I know there's people we want to blame for hurting us, which, maybe there is some blame there. But there's a time when you got to step away from that and start taking your power back. And this was one of those moments where I had to do that. And there was a woman involved in all of this when it happened. And, you know, I had to realize, as much as we all want to force blame on her or other situations in his life, um, again, ultimately, he was responsible for his actions and the things that led up to it. So, yeah.
I'm sorry to bring up I know it's a hard subject to talk about, but
Yeah.
I think in a way it lends itself to who you are. I mean, it shaped you, it shaped your growth. You realize that you had to reach out to your family and be that support, because dealing with grief is one thing. Dealing with grief of suicide is a whole nother issue, especially because, like, for my mom, I knew she was suicidal and I warned my stepfather, but her close friends had no
Mhm.
clue. They had no
Mhm.
clue at all. So, just because somebody is appearing to be very happy all the time doesn't
Mhm.
mean that they are. So pay attention to the cues from your peers. If you see
Right.
some, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I definitely agree with, just being aware of yourself and your surroundings. But, I think a lot of us, and one of my best friends said this, she said, we all have our shit and we can't put it on ourselves to always know what's going on with somebody else.
Right.
It's up to somebody to really say, like, hey, I need some help. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about mental health. And one of those is that people that have mental health don't always ask for help. They do want to pretend they're strong and they got it all together. And then sometimes they're on the opposite end where they're constantly asking for help, constantly scaring people, constantly making themselves, a victim. And maybe they are a victim. And it's like, okay, whoa, we all have to stand back. We all got to, say, when you've got a tribe, and we all got a tribal mindset, like your family, my friends, your friends, we've got to kind of really ground together and say, look, if we're going through something, you can reach out to me, and you got to
Yeah.
have that safe space for somebody.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of what I was getting. It's not so much, there's sometimes that people may say that they're suicidal and they're not. They are doing it for attention. So that's why I said pick up on the cues. If you know somebody is truly suicidal and you can feel it in your bones, then find ways to get them help.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, it's up to a person to reach out. You can't force somebody to reach out, and that's something that I had to grapple with. I mean, I did everything I could do, and it suicide. I remember going to a therapist right after my mom did it with my
Hmm.
grandmother, and I was 24 years old, and this therapist tells me, "Well, you and your grandmother now have a higher propensity to do this." This is like the first thing he says, and it's like, dude, that is just such a narrow classification. I mean, I know what life is.
Hmm.
I know. I mean, I think in order to do that, in order to commit suicide, you have to be just done
Hmm.
mentally.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so So anyway, back to cheating, but I mean, like I said, I brought it up because I know that shaped you. It's not something that you can just go, oh, it was no. It shapes you. Everything that you go
Right.
through shapes you.
Right.
Um. So now we're on this journey. You decided that you're not going to cheat anymore, correct?
Well, I'm not going to say I haven't decided.
Okay.
What happens is when there's a habit that's very much a part of your life. I'm 40 years old. I chose to step into a new me, try on a new outfit. That new outfit was, what does trust feel like? What does commitment feel like? What does loyalty feel like? What does discipline feel like? And this was a journey for me. And I decided that a couple of years ago. And it was a really hard habit to break because when I cheated, I didn't feel nothing. I felt no remorse. I felt no pain. I felt no guilt. Just because it was so normal. It was a normal part of my habitual life. So when, you don't just go cold. For me, I didn't just go cold turkey. I was like, I want to step into this new me. I want to step into this part of me to see what it feels like. And it was hard. It was
Yeah.
hard to say no. It was like an addiction. And, I kept falling, and then I tried to get back up. I kept falling and kept, getting back up. So, it's still within me. This habit, just as many other habits, are still inside of me. It's just what I've learned to do is nurture parts of me that are more towards health and wealth. I've shifted my energy. I've taken on a new part of me that is, allowed to grow bigger and shrink those habits. So when I feel those urges within me, I acknowledge them, like, what's going on? What's going on inside you? Let's talk. Like, I have conversations
Yes.
with myself, like, let's talk about this. Where was this coming from? So yeah.
And you make a good point about something. You said, it was like an addiction. The thing I don't think most people realize, when we talk about addiction, we talk about food, we talk about alcohol, we talk about drugs, we talk about sex, but we don't talk about habits that are basically an addiction, because they're patterns that we fall right back on into, negative self-talk, the cheating, things of those natures. Your inner dialogue has a lot of play in, dare I say, an addiction. I mean, it's something you're used to. You can get out of it, but something will trip you up and trigger you, and you are right back there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, nobody wants to say that's an addiction, but it's comfortable.
Well, I mean, anybody can call it what they want, but when you identify something that is hurting more than helping your life, and it's holding you back from what you're meant for, which is greatness, place whatever label you want on it, but do something about it, so that way you can grow. And I realized that it was just a chain on me, and I was jumping from relationship to relationship to relationship, and I had to spend a relationship with myself, I guess, and I
Hmm.
know it sounds cliche, because a lot of people, like, I was in a relationship with myself. I really did. I had to get in a relationship with myself, and I had to see, like, I wonder if I'll cheat on myself. I wonder if I'm going to do something on myself. Like, am I going to be trustful and loyal to myself? Can I do that even to my, like, I obviously can't do it in the relationships prior,
Right.
but is it the same for me? And it's crazy. Like, when I realized I was willing to cheat on myself, I was willing to be unloyal to myself, that's when I realized I was like, okay, oh hell no, like, this little habit in me has definitely, it's wreaking havoc on myself, which is, that's weirdness. And I had to definitely jump into a relationship with myself, and one of the first things I did is learn about discipline, self-discipline.
That's, my husband died a year ago this week. And for the last year, I've been by myself. And this is the first time, I would say, in a very long time, if, that I've been by myself. And so you are forced to look at who you are
Mhm.
and go deep. When you have nobody else to distract you, you kind of have to sit there with yourself and your thoughts and analyze and work through and figure out who you are. Because, like for you, you had your identity. For me, I had my identity with him for 16 years. So now it's
Mhm.
like, okay, who am I? Because it was always, even the doctor said, the Dawn and John show. It was always us together. I mean, people, even after he died, I had one of my friends that took a picture of me. And she's like, I still see your husband on you.
Mhm.
So it's, you become that, dare I say, click. So you have to re-examine who you are. And I applaud you for, dare I say, dating yourself, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
because it takes a lot of strength to do it. Not everybody's willing to look at the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, what made you decide to launch your Sexy Freedom Media?
Well, I wrote a book about I called it Nothing Sexier Than Freedom. And a
Yeah.
friend of mine said, you can write off everything you're spending on your book if you start an LLC. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'll do
Yeah.
it. And then I was like, well, what do I call it? And she was like, just call it Sexy Freedom. And I was like, all right. So that's what I did. I had no idea the journey that Sexy Freedom was going to take me down, and I'm a big believer in, um, I'll say, a higher spiritual power, creator, a universe, whatever people want to call it, higher consciousness, something, divine intervention. Okay. And I didn't know that was going to take me down a path that I was really resistant to. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just had failed a few times before. Um, and Sexy Freedom sounded so weird. I was like, shouldn't it be called like Freedom is Sexy or Freedom, Sexual Freedom or something? The word sexy just kept coming into my life at a time when identifying one of the issues inside of me that kind of kept this habit going was my lack of confidence, my insecurity, my feeling of not feeling loved or wanted or desired in the skin I was in. And everybody always was like, you're beautiful, you're pretty, you're this and that, and you want, of course, everybody wants to feel that way. But people think that and misjudge me as just because I have an outward appearance that I ultimately felt that way. And I didn't. So I wanted to feel inside sexy. And it came at a crazy time because right when I was writing the book and I was deciding to start my business, Sexy Freedom, I decided to go with the word sexy because I wanted to feel sexy inside. My spirit wanted to feel sexy,
And do,
match my
yeah.
outside.
And do
Yeah.
you? And do
Oh
you?
yeah. Now I do. And I realize sexy is what they say. It's confidence. It's inner confidence. It's wisdom. It's spirit. It's heart. There's so much more about it. And there was actually a funny story is one time I was in a dentist office and I couldn't get on my website because sexy had to do with the word porn, or it was, bringing up
Yeah.
porn. And I decided to Google myself when I got out of there because I was like, why isn't it bringing it? It was blocked. Why isn't it bringing it up? So I Googled my business. It was the first time, like probably about 4 years ago. And when I put in Sexy Freedom, I'm telling you, porn just like blew up. I think I was on the third page and I was the only business that wasn't associated with porn. And it hit me, oh my gosh, like, should I change my name? And there
Mhm.
was this voice inside me that was like, no, no, because maybe you're the new voice that needs to stand up and say, there's sexy stands for so much more, and now if you Google Sexy Freedom, I come up on one of the first or second pages, and it's not just associated with porn. So I think there's a lot of other trailblazers out there who have decided to do the same thing, because there's a lot of businesses out there that are starting to speak up about it.
Awesome. And that's the thing. I mean, I just recorded a podcast with a male model, like before I talked to you.
Yeah.
And, we were talking about the perception of how, here he looks like this. And yeah, it takes no work to look like this. Oh no, no. He goes on, he was telling me, it used to take maybe 4 weeks to make sure he looked good for a photo shoot. And now it's like, I'm 30 years old. So now it takes about 11 weeks. But it's all that perception of, oh, well, you just look like this.
Right.
And quite honestly, there's sometimes he says that it messes with his head. And
Yeah.
so even the people that we look at that are beautiful, they still
Mm-hmm.
have that self-confidence issue occasionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
So
true.
I mean, that's the one thing it was interesting because what we're talking about now about we all have those personal little issues that we don't necessarily always want to face, but we show that outside world that, hey, I'm okay, I'm sexy, and I'm good, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't know what's really going on all the time.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so what do you hope to achieve with your media company?
So right now, I'm actually in I'm in a new process right now, actually, recently, because I was a solopreneur for the first 4 years of my business. And 12 years ago, I started speaking. So, or 13 years ago. So I've got all these titles now: author, speaker, coach, mentor, retreat leader, yoga instructor, workshop leader, podcaster. I'm definitely my sister calls me an overachiever. ADHD is
Nothing.
my superpower. I'm a creator. I love creating. I love going out and accepting the challenge to get something done. But now I've realized that it's time for me to level up and take my brand, my business to a new level. So I've recently sought out help to take my business to that next level. And so in saying that, I'm starting to get more clarification on where I am as a woman, as a queen, as a powerhouse in this industry. And that means that now I've got to, shift my perspective and kind of understand where I'm headed. And one of those places is I'm going to take my brand from solopreneur to team, and probably create a course so that way I can make myself more available for speaking engagements, retreats, and in-person workshops. So
And,
that's what that's
and
where I'm trying to take it.
what would the course be about?
Well, right now I've got a couple different ideas. I'm in the process of creating them because I've got such a wide variety of background.
Yeah, yeah.
I can do a writing course, but one of my signature talks is Protect the Throne. It's actually the subtitle of my next book that's coming out, based on my belief that, and actually what has helped me grow is tapping into my warrior spirit, tapping into using my tools. Don't just talk about, be about it. More heart, more soul, more spirit. And because there's a lot of suffering in this world, and when I step back from everything, I see um, there's so many people that want to help people, and I don't think there's enough of us, because there's still kids out there that are getting abused. There's still sex trafficking. you know I got a big heart, and I just
Yeah.
can't stay silent about that. So in order to do that, I've got to help other warriors rise to the occasion. So that's where I'm willing to take it.
It sounds pretty impressive. Um, since we're talking about, and the only reason I'm going to say this is because it was quoted recently by Britney Spears, that she was saying her conservatorship was, and her working the way she was worked and everything, was a tantamount to sex trafficking. How do you feel about this whole thing with Britney? I mean,
Oh
I know.
yeah, I saw it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a shame that, that situation's happening. I think that we all can be in a cage at some point. Whether it's a star who's encaged by whoever's got her under the conservatorship, or, children under their parents or guardians, um, or even spouses who are in
Bad
abusive
marriage. Yeah.
situations, and, sex trafficking, who are oppressed by their oppressors. And it's just, the thing about it is, and this is another reason why I feel that people that are called to go in this direction, to speak up, to help people unleash their warrior, because warrior is a very ancient term. It's a very tribal mindset, and there's good ones and there's evil ones, and there's evil ones that we've got to stand up and fight against. So people are living in fear. They want to please other people, or they care about what other people think, and they're afraid to speak up. And it's because of that I believe people like Brittany, people like, sex trafficking victims, kids that are being abused, are not being helped. They're being overlooked. They're being, oh, somebody else will help them. There's a nonprofit for that. There's people out there that'll help them. Mm-mm, no,
Not always.
you saw it. You're being called towards it, and I'm not blaming you if you don't do anything. But what I'm here to say, and I'm here to help with, is help to awaken that warrior, so that warrior has courage and strength to not just help those people, but maybe help yourself.
I just watched Bombshell. You know what I'm talking about, the story about Roger Ailes.
I no, I have not seen it.
Okay. It's Charlize Theron's in it, and it's all about how women basically had to get down on their knees to get a promotion. And
Mm.
people will be like, well, that's not going to happen anymore. We have the Me Too movement. But the truth of the matter is that is still going to happen. You
It's
know,
still happening. Yeah.
it it doesn't change. And I will say, to be fair, because I know some people will be like, well, it never happens to guys. Well, no, there are women that are in power that do the same thing.
Hmm.
I will be fair. Um, but these are all situations that we need to look at and examine and realize that the person that has to be subjected to this because they know that they want to get ahead. It is a mental game that they have to then look at because they're going to feel ashamed. They're going to feel removed from themselves at some point
Hmm.
because how do you deal with this? And
Hmm.
it goes back to being free of that thought and free of the oppression.
Right. Right. There's nothing sexier than freedom. I'll tell you that. When you start when I wrote this book, um, I had a pen name on it. And at the very last minute, I decided to change it to my real name because I thought, why am I hiding? Why am I telling everything, but then hiding who I am? And I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. And so my dirty laundry is all over. It's out there. It's international now.
Yeah.
And and it feels there's a freedom that a lot of people won't experience that I've experienced. And I got to tell you, it's phenomenal. But I know if you do want to experience that, you can take the steps forward to feel that. And like what you were saying about the movie, um, we don't have to, some of us, we have a narrow mind. We think the only way to get to point Z is by walking, A, B, C, D. And it's not that way anymore. There's so many avenues. There's so many paths to take. We're in a great time in our life. We got different choices and paths that we can take. And we can actually just, instead of walking, you know, uh, under the bridge, we can walk over, or I'm sorry, walking through the river, we can walk over the bridge. There's people have done it before us, and you've just got to instill that belief in yourself that you can do the same.
Yeah. And I mean, it's very true because you don't have to, if we can go back to Justin Bieber,
Yeah.
because let's think about this. Justin Bieber, if YouTube hadn't existed, would
Right.
he have gotten the career he has?
Right.
And there's something that is not in the norm. It's something that you never know what can happen. And that's always, you have to look at life because one small step, another place, and you're off in a different direction.
Sure. Sure.
I
Yeah.
mean, I had the opportunity to move to California at one point, and I was already friends with my husband, and my husband was like, "Why do you want to do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just want to." He's like, "Oh, you
Mm.
really shouldn't." I was like, "Okay." So I stayed, and ultimately, the way it played out, if you go back to a better two moment, ultimately the way it played out, yeah, I had a company that was going to move me out there. Within 3 months of me moving out there, the company closed down.
Ah, yeah.
So I would have been stuck in Stockton, California with nothing. So
Right.
you never know. So you have to pay attention to the steps you're taking.
Right.
So when is your next book coming out?
Well, right now it's in the process. I just announced that my co-author is my son, Elijah Edwards. So we've actually been writing it together for the past year. He's in the military, so he's going to be going on tour in another country next in 2 months. So because of that, it's all tentative on when it's coming out. But like I told him, we're not in a rush. We're going to focus on the value of this, and in the meantime, we can, because of my first book, I know the ropes. I can start with marketing. I could start with all the fun stuff that's a part of it. And
Yeah.
and we can just spend time in our first draft before we get an editor. So that's the cool thing about being a published author already, is you kind of know what needs to happen, what you can work on while the other author is uh, carrying on, defending our country.
Yeah, yeah. Um, what made you decide to collaborate this time?
It was just a conversation. I just, threw it out there, and I was like, we should write a book. He's like, I'd write a book with you. And I was like, really? I was actually shocked. We've had a rocky past, and this was, I mean, if anybody out there has read Nothing Sexier Than Freedom, you'd understand how how amazing this truly is to have my son as my co-author. And the cool thing is, I'm 40, he's 21. We have different perspectives in different life paths. So we can write from different angles about, you know, what it means to protect the throne, which is protecting the mind, body, and spirit.
Is it hard to have him go off on tour?
It's hard to know that your loved ones are out there and doing, kind of out there flying by themselves with new wings. So yeah, it's challenging, but I believe in him. And I know, what I seen my mom go through with my brother. She's such a powerful woman, and to see her carry on makes me understand that, you know, you never know when your time is up. None of us do. I don't know when his time is up, my son. But what I do know is that whatever happens, happens, and I'll handle it when it happens or if it happens. I'm very much aware and very awoken to the possibility of death for any of us. And a lot of us don't want to face that. We don't want to talk about it. But when it happens, like, it's happened to you, it's in the back of your mind. And because of that, I try to restore relationships. I try to build relationships. I try to keep relationships going, because I know that we're creating memories. We're creating these, these beautiful things we can look back on, whether we get old or somebody leaves us early.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm going to say this: a year, not even a year before my husband died. I mean, he had always been sick in our whole relationship, but that September, September 2019, we were told he's on borrowed time. And, at that point, it's like, okay, so you want to see these friends before you pass. And, that's fine. But in the back of your mind, you don't realize the anxiety you're putting yourself under. You don't realize that you're sitting there each morning, waking up, going, okay, is he going to wake up? Are we going to be okay? What's going to, I mean, and I didn't realize it. You don't think about it. And it's the same thing living with somebody who is walking that fine line. I mean, with my mom, she threatened suicide for a month straight, and she even tried it when I was in high school. So I mean, I had gone through that, and it does create a certain level of anxiety, and
Right.
you don't understand it, but you have to. And that's the thing I try to tell other people is whether somebody's on borrowed time, you still don't know. You don't know when it's going to happen. But the same is true.
Right.
What happens if your spouse gets in a car and doesn't make it home that night?
Mm-hmm.
Treasure every freaking moment you have, because you never know when it's going to be the last.
Right. Yeah. And to add to that, I think of kids who've kind of lost their life early. Sometimes I don't know a lot of people that do this, but this is something I do to self-inspire. When I get in complacency, is I'll specifically Google and research lives who were lost, unexpectedly or died too young. And I think like, oh my God, I'm 40. I've made it 40 years. I've had 40 years of this human experience, and there's a couple kids that never made it to 2 years old, never made it to 10, to 12, to experience all these things that I have. So I consider it like, what, why am I not stepping
Yeah.
in my power? Yeah, my brother took his life and my dad's gone too. I've gone through a lot of funerals since a child, and I realize we say let's honor our ancestors by living our best life, but how many of us actually do it? And I was like, this is an opportunity for you to do it. But to do that, I've got to self-sustain my own inspiration, my own motivation, my own, the why behind I do everything. And that's a continual effort on my part.
It's in it. It takes a lot of effort to do it. I mean, I know it does. I get what you're saying. For me, when I hit 41, yes, because I'm older than 41, as we know. When I hit 41, I was like, all right. When I hit 42, I'm like, all right, I've outlived my mother. So that was that moment when you realize, okay, so now you've outlasted your mom. You're going to continue on. You're living a life that she gave up. So keep on going. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing about grief. I'm going to say, not that I'm talking so much about her grief, but grief is not linear. You're not going to just go, okay, it's all fine now, because it will come back and you will relive the experience. For me, when my husband died, he was sitting right next to me in the car.
Mm.
So I watched him die. And I
Mhm.
will say death is takes many shapes and forms, but watching your loved one die is one of the hardest things you will ever do.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, yeah. Anyway, so so before I turn into a blubbering mess, let's see what
Yeah.
else we can talk about. Um,
No,
so what?
I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
And I acknowledge you and thank you for sharing that. I mean, on your podcast, but yeah, I get it. There's a lot of people who definitely have been through the same thing. And um, I think it's very brave and bold when you share your story because that gives others the permission to feel, when grief has the ability to turn people off and make
yeah,
people just stop, you know, living. And that's again, it's it is the human experience to process and go through these things. And that's one of the things that I've stepped back with. And I often step back and I look at it because we can take moments in our life and we can beat ourselves up for not knowing or feeling a certain way, and I'm like, whoa, whoa,
yeah,
whoa, 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 Helen. And I'm one of the hardest persons on myself, and I'll step back and I'll say, hey, like, it's almost like a outer body experience, and I'll say, whoa, you're living in this weird dimension on this floating ball, with
hmm,
animals who can talk to each other but can't talk to you, you know, and it's like, look at these are emotions. They're
yeah,
part of this weird makeup of your body. Like, let's take off the skin, let's look at the nervous system, endocrine system. I'm a big science nerd and I want to know about it all. Like, why am I over emotional on this day versus this day? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So that has allowed me to have grace that there's more at work than just this me thinking it's just me. There's a lot going on inside.
Right. For me, dealing with this process, and I've talked about this before on my podcast. I had written a character that she had lost her husband a year before, 3 months before my husband died. And recently I revisited that character and I changed her husband's death. And
Mm,
basically it was a grieving process for me because I ended up writing it more similar to what I had experienced, write what you
hmm.
know. And it
Right.
was it was healing, but I still haven't finished it because ultimately, even though my husband died, they did get him back and I had to take him off of life support,
Hmm.
which is, when you think about the trauma of watching somebody die, then they came back and then having to make that decision, it's hard. It's hard.
Hmm.
But the one thing you were saying about emotions and everything, talking to a neuroscientist, which I know now I'm like jumped all the way over here, but in the neuroscience, talks about how we're all connected, how we, even though we don't realize it, we all are all intuitively connected.
Hmm.
And it's really powerful. And nobody really realizes that. They're always like, oh, well, I'm not intuitive. Yeah, you are. If you know somebody's going to call you, if you know what song's coming on the radio, if you think of somebody and they call you later on, that's
Hmm.
all about intuition and being connected.
Yeah.
And that's pretty powerful. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's being connected with your emotions. That's why I tied it in back in, because
Hmm.
without that emotional connection, can you imagine the savages we would be?
Yeah, I think we're all still savages. Just we do things to ourselves or do other people, unintentionally or intentionally. It's just that savage energy is kind of redirected, to be honest. And I try to look at it like, where's my energy going? Where is it profiting or having the best results? Because it's always going somewhere. From the moment you wake up and you take your first breath, that energy is like, where am I going today? You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like yesterday morning, I woke up and I had a song lyric stuck in my head saying "It's gonna be all right, one day at a time."
Mm.
And then I opened my phone up and I got an email from somebody, and the title of it is "It's gonna be all right." I'm like, okay,
Whoa,
so
that's a sign.
yeah, I'm like, obviously my intuition's like on high, and yes, this is a sign, so pay attention. So I mean, but those are the little things I'm saying. We don't necessarily always pay attention to those things, and we should,
Yeah.
because it would help us navigate that energy instead of getting it all balled up and worried about and letting that fear that we were talking about come in,
Mhm.
because fear is a self-sabotaging mother. all the
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you got to find a way to step out of it. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Definitely acknowledge one of the things I do. I read a book by Susan Jeffers many years ago. I want to say the beginning of my journey. And it stuck with me. It was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyways. And that became my mantra. And when I went to go see my son in DC last month, I asked him a few things like, what do you think you took from me? And he said, what's crazy, Mom? The one thing I remember you always saying is feel the fear and do it anyways. And that's actually his caption on his Instagram page.
Nice.
And that's what he said that is like the foundation and always in the back of his mind of everything he does and why he presses forward, going after his own goals is because of feel the fear and do it anyways. So I got a new one that I always tell myself now. It's feel the fear and make moves anyways. And that kind of always, I'll wake up and I'll go, I got to make moves, and I've reprogrammed and retrained my brain to be a woman of action or a person of action rather than a person who thinks about doing something. But that's also got me in a lot of trouble because I became a little firecracker where I was acting more than thinking. So I had to really pull back my horses that
Bring them in.
bring them in and be like, all right, guys, let's have strategy, let's have clarity, and that's where I'm at right now.
Do you ever think about how people react to you, based on your actions? Just curious.
No, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. Do I think about how people react to me? I I guess there's a yes no to that question. The no is like no because I'm so focused on my own endeavors, and the yes is based on people that I've had uh, come across who have been more of a uh, question me and have I don't want to say haters, but because they were all more like just questioning people that were like, why are you doing this? What are you doing this? What do you and they were actually more of people that were in my circle, in my somewhere down my circle, somewhere down my line, friend maybe or somebody.
Do you think people are more reactionary now than they used to be?
I've gotten reactions on Facebook or social media if I post something and people are like, especially in an entrepreneur group, I'll get different reactions. Some are, cheerlead. I would say most are cheerleaders, and then I get a few, like a handful that are like sexy, And then I realize, you know, there's a few things. Like again, I've got a really good uh, handle on my own responsiveness where I, again, like I'm able to step out of the equation and look at it. And I can see these women, uh, mostly women, I'll say, they'll step back and I could see them. They're having issues amongst themselves with the word sexy or cheating, or they're triggered or something happened to them. So I realize it's not even about me. It's not about me, you
Well,
know?
you know, back to the cheating thing, and I think last time we tried to record this, we talked about this, cheating in romance novels. There are
Mhm.
women that are just like, oh my gosh, I can't read this. And they'll leave a bad review because somebody
Yeah.
cheated. It's like, it's a fact of life. It's not saying that all men are cheaters or all women are cheaters. It happens.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
especially when you're dealing with somebody that's, we'll say, in rock star romances, you
Mhm.
know, people lose their mind if a rock star cheats. Well, they're on the road. They have women coming, throwing themselves at them. Not all men
Mhm.
are going to turn that down. Some will,
Mhm.
some won't. But when
Yeah.
there are women that will leave a 1-star review or 2-star review because somebody cheated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And it's got to be because somehow, somewhere in their life, somebody cheated. Social media, talking about social media, and you have critiques sometimes of the most ridiculous things. Somebody
Mhm.
critiqued on TikTok saying that I should use blonde or taupe in my eyebrows because my eyebrows were too dark. And I just responded back with, they're my natural eyebrows. What do you want me to do? I
Yeah.
mean, it's like we have armchair critics now that they look to try to take somebody down. And does that affect you?
Right.
How does that affect your self-esteem when somebody's going, "Ugh, you're being ridiculous," that you don't
Yeah.
even know, a total
Well,
stranger?
Okay, so actually, there was a few things where, I've gotten people saying stuff to me, and I realize I've got power. I am powerful. I don't need that. I don't need it on my page. So I'll either delete them or I'll respond with thank you. Thank you for acknowledging me, because I realize some people are doing it for attention. They're just trying to make some noise. There's, especially when it comes to social media, there's algorithms. So people engage not to engage for connection, but more to engage for business growth. So, you got to decipher that, and you got to say, do I want this on my page or not? Do I want them to get attention and pull the attention away from what I'm really trying to say to my fans or my audience? So if you're listening and you're somebody who's getting that type of um, you know, responses, reactions, you just remember you have power to do something. But if you do nothing, that's also a power. That's also saying, I choose not to do anything and it doesn't bother me. And we should all come to knowing ourselves and what we can handle.
Which you described as the hangman card totally, in the
Yeah.
tarot.
Yeah.
But I used to do fairs, and I had a tarot event that I read at, and on my page, one of the clients that I read for that day left this great review, and a family member came in and said, "You shouldn't be doing that. It's against God. It's against this."
Mhm. Mhm.
And I thought to myself, why are you doing this? Firstly, why are you chastising her? She's a free person. She can do whatever she wants. So
Mhm.
I didn't respond. I just went and deleted it, and I blocked them because I don't
Mhm.
need that on my page.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Block
just
them.
it's yeah. Instead of the F word, just block them. I mean, you just have
Yeah.
to take your power back when you need it, and if it's gonna bother you, and if it's gonna if she, like for that instance, they were harassing the other person, and it's not, I don't play
Mhm.
that game on my page. And I had some political discourse on my private page, and it's like, no, I took the post down because I didn't want to deal with it. I don't,
Mhm.
it's not that I
Yeah.
don't think you shouldn't have a voice. You should, but
Mhm.
don't just be somebody else's, berating somebody else because you don't believe the same thing they do.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I believe life is a game. That's the way I believe it. I also believe it's a gift, but when it comes to strategy, it's a game for me. And I wrote it multiple times in my book. And since I was a kid, I kind of stepped back. I don't even know where I learned it from, to be honest. I was so young, but I developed a skill of stepping back and realizing that this is a game. Some people don't make it, some people make it to the end. And there's different tools. There's different. I was a big Mario, what is it called? Nintendo
Yeah,
player
yeah,
when
yeah,
I
yeah.
was young. And somehow I connected Nintendo with actual real life. And I realized there's levels to games. There's, coins to make. There's, you know, mountains to jump in, things to fly on. And they're the same in the real world. And I started realizing that it really is. If you want to step back and look at it, we're all kind of playing this game of life. Like, who's going to win? Who's going to make it? Who's making the best steps forward? And when I was able to look at it like that, I started taking my emotions out of it. And that was at a very young age. When you start taking your emotions out of it, um, it can result in great things, but it also resulted in some things that I was able to block my childhood trauma, that now I'm really starting to understand and allow my emotions free. But on the flip side, the great side, which I want to really talk about, is now I'm able to say, take my emotions out of it. I've learned a lot about emotional intelligence, and I really believe I'm going to skyrocket because I've done this. Not all the time, but you got to pick and choose your battles.
Yeah, yeah. And for anybody listening out there, you know, childhood trauma is something that's very real, and you will bury it and you don't even realize you buried it, and
Mhm.
it will come back at the weirdest times, and you're like, okay, time to work
Yeah.
on this, time to get this through.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
it makes you stronger, and it makes you, I mean, I watched the Netflix Dear John Betty Broderick story, which,
Yes.
okay, so I watched that, and I was around, I was in my late teens when all that went down. But as I'm watching it, I started seeing shades of my mother, and I started seeing shades of my father's infidelity and stuff. And I sat there and I was like, wait a second. So as I unpacked all this, I started and stepped away and looked at my parents. If you have to come to a certain point as you get older to forgive your parents
Mhm.
and look at them as humans, flawed humans, and even take a step further back and realize that your grandparents were different to your parents than they
Mhm.
were to
Mhm.
you. And I think that's a big picture that we never really look at until we get older.
Mhm.
Because as younger people, we just kind of go, okay, yeah, everybody's got their role. This is how they are. But in order to forgive them and to forgive yourself, you have to look at them as an adult.
Yeah, no, I love that you mentioned that. That's perfectly said, to be able to, that's a wisdom that many unfortunately don't get to experience. And it's a beautiful wisdom that you just pointed out about being able to step back and look at your parents and see their parents, or acknowledge that they may have had a different upbringing, and then their parents, and so on and so forth
Yeah.
down the line. That's why I'm a big believer of ancestral work, and the lineage of the warrior, um, specifically the warrior spirit, because I believe we all have a warrior somewhere down our path in ancient times that has brought us and is still somewhere inside of us to this day.
Yeah. And I don't think we look at our ancestors enough. We honor them, but we don't see who they truly were.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that's, I think if we can look at them and then start healing from that process, then we grow. And I think
Right.
that's important. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, people can find you at the sexyfreedom.com. Is there
Sexyfreedom.com.
is there anything else you want to add about our conversation? Anything you feel like you need to add to it?
This was a great conversation, and I'm really glad we did this again. You are so amazing. I
Thank
just love
you.
what you're doing with your podcast.
Thanks.
And for everybody out there listening, go follow her and me,
Yes.
Sexy Freedom Media on Instagram, Hell of a Journey with one L,
Yep.
and Sexy Freedom Media on Facebook. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Better Two podcast. Your listenership is greatly appreciated. If you like what you hear, remember to hit subscribe. We also have our videos on YouTube. They're usually posted the same day as the podcast, and you should check it out. If you have a question or you would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me an email, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it. The email is Donna, Dauna, at thebettertwopodcast.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and catch you next time.